There's a kids store in the US called Camp, and I think it's only something like 25% of their sales come out of toys. The rest of their business is made up from these really interactive, entertaining experiences that they build around the toys and around the product. And so it means that they do that through like live events, online executions, and then in-store activations and so forth. And so they have become famous for entertainment. And the reason that it's really important is that purpose overall for business has changed a lot, right? It used to be around, you know, why do we exist outside of making money? And it's moved to a place now where it's saying, if your brand is the answer, what's the question, right? So when we think about a business like Camp, the question that is being asked is, where do I take my kids to have fun? Camp, right? The challenge that we have in emotional defaults is that often what happens with brands and businesses is they try to play across multiple categories and not become famous, invest and focus on one in particular. And so what that does is it actually creates cognitive dissonance, which is confusing the consumer, right? And so at any time that you confuse a customer, it's really hard to repair it. It's no different to a relationship, right? You have doubt in your relationship or lack trust in your relationship. It's very hard to mend that in the future. And so the whole point around that is to be very clear around what is your emotional default? What is the feeling that you are trying to sell to your customer or audience? And how do you deep dive and double down on providing that feeling to your audience?
Yeah, really, interesting. I've got a lot of questions off the back of that. So when you say, first of all, the cognitive default around, you know, buying your shopping from Coles, or you get your sports gear from Rebel Sport, is it harder for small to medium brands to play in that cognitive space, or is it sort of category dependent?
It can become cognitive, like a cognitive default, but normally, you know, and often the feedback is like, when I talk about this, people go, yeah, but we're not JB Hi-Fi and we're not Rebel Sport or these big boy retailers. So it is always better to focus on your emotional default. And a lot of big brands still do it. You know, Dyson's a great example, where they focus on design, right? They're famous for design. Where do I go for the best design product? Dyson. And they're not reinventing the wheel or creating new product that hasn't been done before, but they're looking at existing product. Their vacuum is a great example, where they're taking product and reinterpreting it and saying, how can it function better or in a different way that provides the best engineered and designed product for our customer. And therefore the experience of that changes. And so it can move in, you can move into becoming a cognitive default, but it's after somebody has experienced your brand or business a few times.
Okay, so they all brands should start out, or generally start out, in that emotional stage, and then to touch on those 4 pillars: entertainment, experience, expertise, and design. Are you saying that they should double down on one of those, or do they need to be across all 4 of those?
No, they need to double down on one of them, right? So the challenge is we fall into this space around getting clarity around what we do and how we do it, but we don't often focus or understand clearly around why we're doing it, right? And so the expectation from a customer or consumer now is, well, what's the positive impact your brand or business is going to have on me and the world around me, right? And so the 2 pieces that I always see is that brands and businesses don't spend enough time to really understand themselves as almost like a person in themselves, right? And often I will talk about, you know, if you took your brand or business and they went to a party, how would they sound? What would they say? What would they wear, right? Because what you're ultimately trying to do, no different to what you and I did, is it's that gut feeling that you're trying to tap into, right? And your gut feeling is that emotional connection and personal connection that says to you, is this someone I trust? Is this someone that I'm prepared to share information with. And so the two parts is knowing yourself in that way, but then getting the graphics clear on your customer personas as well, so that you then can connect on an emotional level, right? And that's where this whole piece has changed. It used to be about demographics. You know, Rachel's 23 and she's a new mom and whatever else. She lives in this location and has a job doing this. That's a demographic. But what we're trying to understand now and connect with is the psychographics, right? So it's the values, the beliefs, the behaviors, the principles that they live by that connect with you. So not about product, but about this. They believe in the same things that I do and have a like-minded thought process and mindset as what I do.
Yeah, I love it. That sounds so deep but so interesting. And I can relate to that. I went to Chadstone on the weekend and I had a pretty average retail experience with a couple of big retailers, which I can go into at some point. But yeah, there was a real disconnect between what I expected and the service and the feeling, the layout of the store was not congruent, and it made me think less of the brand. Question: how does a brand know if you're a brand manager or if you're an owner of a business or a retailer and things aren't going well for you? Like, how do you know whether this is something that needs to be explored? Is there some signals that brands would be seeing that they need to delve more into the, you know, what their emotional default is?
Yeah, it's quite an interesting one, actually, because I find often the telltale signs of a brand or business is when they are, it's a very outbound journey, right? And what happens often is that we, as a business, will go, what can I add to my business to improve it, right? And you become kind of pinball, right? So you go, oh, let's open up into homeware, or let's do this sale here to drive revenue. Humans do it as well. Right? When we are unhappy or not satisfied, we go, oh, I need to get the new car, or, you know, I just go away on holiday, or I need a new girlfriend, or whatever it might be. And it's an outbound journey, right? But it actually needs to be an inbound journey, because, and that's the default that happens often with our thinking, is that we go, what do I add to myself or to my brand or business to improve? But that often says to me, they don't have the clarity or the discipline and understanding around themselves to know what are those 1%ers to do internally to improve externally, right? Because the power in moving 1% is next level. If you're on an airplane and you deviate course 1%, you are going to end up in a very different location. And so if you're doing it in a way that is, I will just add that, or we will discount here, or we'll be a part of Click Frenzy and Afterpay Day, you're not really clear about what is the return on that investment other than transactional retail and facilitating or shortening your funnel to get somebody to purchase product, right? But the problem with that as well is that you're actually changing your brand because you haven't done the work on yourself first to know, here's what we want to be famous for, and here is the disciplines that we have to say, here's what we would do and here's what we wouldn't do.